Hey, what's up? Skywalker Bear here with Imagination Creation Films, and today we're talking about the difference between specular and diffused lights. You know this isn't a joke, right? I work really hard at this to give it that polished professional look that everyone loves.
You call a puppet professional?
So yeah, today we're going to be continuing our dive into the world of light by talking about the differences between specular and diffused light. Now before I enlighten you,
You call that professional?
let me take a moment to ask that you click subscribe to this channel because we're a growing community of filmmakers and storytellers, and we think you'd be a great addition. Also, I do have a Patreon if you wish to support me that way. It really helps me make great videos just like this. So the first one we're talking about is specular light. Now you may have heard people talk about it in the past, but weren't really quite sure what it was. Well, simply it is the point of highest concentration of light that is emitted from a light source.
You're speaking Greek, buddy, and you don't speak Greek.
Light is made up of photons, billions actually. When you turn on a light, they shoot out in all directions possible. A perfect bulb might be a sphere with light emitting from all directions equally. And the sun is about as close as we can get to a perfect light emitting sphere. Light bulbs on Earth have small imperfections and natural barriers that can block that light due to manufacturing. Now these are all small blockages, but when we get into math in a later episode, that'll all start to play into the mix. Now, in the lights that we use for film and such, they usually place a reflector behind the bulb to force those photons out the front. And then they put a reflector on the front to control the spread of light, or photons in actuality. So if this bulb were to put out, and this would obviously be a hilariously low number, but say 10,000 photons a second, then a small portion of those photons would go straight towards the camera. Let's say about 100. Now, if we were able to effectively measure those individual photons at the camera, we would read, well, 100, while another 100 go here and here and here and here. Now, let's use this reflector as an example. My finger is the light bulb. Now, some of this light will be heading straight towards the camera. Some of it's going to go off to the side, and some of it's going to bounce around all over the place inside and hit that perfect angle where it also heads toward the camera. Now, previously and theoretically, we measured 100 photons hitting the camera, and now let's say 10 additional photons have reflected towards the camera. Now, this would cause the total amount of light hitting the camera to be brighter, 110, than without the reflector, because light is additive. Now, we're going to dive into the true relationship of light output with cameras and our eyes in a later video to help you understand deeper. But for now, let's focus on the practical discussions. Yeah, focus.
No.
Now, many of these reflectors are designed with curves to refract or bounce the light towards the center, so you end up with a large concentration of photons in the middle. Since they're designed with the emphasis on the center, the edges where fewer and fewer photons can hit appear dimmer and dimmer the further and further you get away from the center. Now, the brightest point is what we call specular light. And I get the feeling your eyes just glazed over.
Wait, you just got that? Seriously?
Let's do an example with actual light. Remember the background light from last video? It has a great example of specular light output. And we have the little aperture 120T here with the Fresnel adapter on it. And if you look here in the center is much brighter than the outside. In fact, this looks quite normal from my skin, and this just starts to blow out. Now, if we take a light meter and we measure right here in the middle, we get 16,000 lux. If we measure right here, it's 8,000. Over here, 700. So you can see the light fall off is tremendous. Now we can even focus this light even further. Now we've blown out the center really, really a lot. And we're at 44,000 lux here in the center. But right here, let's get a better reading, 6,300. Now right here, 340. And then out here, 200. This is the specular. Okay, so specular light is the highest concentration of light that hits an object due to light coming from different angles. So what then is diffused light? Well, diffused light is light that has been altered so that the light can emit equally in all directions outward from its input source. So it's basically removing the specular light effect and replacing it with a smoother, more even light. Now it does this by absorbing the light that's hitting it and causing the material itself to become the light source. Remember in our last episode when I put my hand very close to the light and my fingers themselves began to act as the light emitter? Well, the fingers were acting as diffusion at that point. Now, diffused light can be ever so slightly less hard than the original, all the way to extremely soft.
Walk away, walk away.
Here's some diffusion sheets so you can actually see the difference. Now this one is really light and you can almost see through it, and it would actually have very little effect on the specular. And this one is quite opaque and it would have a dramatic effect on the specular. Now, diffusion comes at a cost. Light is lost in the process, so the amount of light that hits your subject will be less. However, since diffusion is acting as the light source itself, you can end up with a very, very soft light. As we learned from last week, that gives us soft shadows. Now, if we look at this specular light right here, and I put diffusion over it, all of a sudden that light got super soft. And if I put my hand in front of it, you can see the shadows change dramatically. Now, let's take a reading right here. This is 3,600, and that's 17,000. So we lost a lot of light. However, let's take a reading right here. That's 2,200, and it's 4,500. Now let's take a reading from over here, where that reads 300, but now it reads 840. There's a lot of light that is diffused just by this. Now let's take this and point it as a spot and show what it can do here. So again, 47,000 lux right there, 2,600. Notice how that specular changed dramatically with just diffusion. Over here, pointed at it, 280. Put the diffusion on it, and we're 560. So it spreads the light over greater distances. Now we'll be doing an entire episode on the diffusion materials and the effect that they have on objects at a later date, so be sure to subscribe to make sure you get to see when it comes out. Now, if you have any questions or comments, do feel free to put those in the comment section down below. I do try to read and respond each and every one, even if it's just to say thank you. You can follow me on all the social medias at Scott Balkum, and I do have a Patreon if you wish to support me that way. I appreciate each and every one of my supporters. They help make great content just like this. Alternatively, if you wish to support me via Amazon, you can purchase anything using one of my affiliate links down below. Every little bit will help. Now, please remember to give me a thumbs up, and remember to click that subscription button and the little alert bell next to it. This is a growing community of filmmakers and storytellers, and we really do think you'd be a great part of it. And the alert bell will notify you every time I upload a video or when I live stream, which is just another way I answer your questions. So, as always, as I like to leave it, don't let your passions center around your life. Let your life center around your passions.